And welcome to the Teach Bigger podcast. I'm Chris Pratt, and we're here today with Chris Mosley and Tyler Lamont. Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going all right. I love the intro.
Hey,
Yeah,
been working on it.
Third time's the charm.
There it is.
Third time's the charm.
All right, so yesterday we had a pretty deep dive into this notion of the gaming community and why is it successful and what makes it successful. And the fact was we had no idea what made it successful, but we know that it is successful. And I kind of proposed the thought that if we continue in this virtual environment going back in August or September, maybe we do, maybe we don't, but what are we going to do as educators to make our culture successful, and especially if it becomes a virtual culture, because that's going to really be a game changer for a lot of teachers, because so many of us, I know me personally, when I'm teaching, I thrive on that interaction with kids. So I think it's something worth diving into. So what we thought about today was kind of dedicating this program to looking at the gaming culture and kind of comparing and contrasting what we see in education, and then maybe kind of having some dialogue about what we can think of as we move into the future. So, you ready? I'll take the silence as anticipation.
Sure, why not?
Let's do
Yes.
it. All right. So I did find this interesting statistic that I'm going to throw out there just because it surprised me. And so if it surprised me, I'm sure it surprised at least one more person. So I'm going to share it.
Well, you're easily surprised.
Right.
That's
That is true. And but we'll move on. So I didn't know this. Okay. So here's a question. Get this in your head. What do you think the average gender and age is of a quote unquote gamer?
A 13-year-old boy.
Right? So now that you've put that in everybody's minds, let's give them
I'm
about
sorry.
let's give them
we're
about 3
supposed to wait
seconds
for
to
a
think.
second?
Like wait time for people to respond. So we're gonna,
okay. Sorry.
It's okay. We're gonna let them think for a second. Disregard what Mosley said because he's a boomer, so he may or may not know.
Got it, got it.
But let's just kind of let's take a pause. Okay, what do you think it is? All right, Mosley, what do you think it is?
13-year-old boy for 200.
How did I know you were going to say
What
that?
is a 13-year-old boy for 200, Bob?
I think that is a question. What is a 13-year-old boy? So
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to ask Tyler
so,
because
are you going to tell us the answer?
I am. I'm
Okay.
not going to ask Tyler though because he knows.
What is Tyler? What's your answer?
He knows already. He's a
I already
gamer.
know.
He's got a Twitch.
Oh, he is a 13-year-old boy. That's why.
That doesn't mean.
You are a 13-year-old boy, of course.
There
Now,
it is.
look, okay, if you ask me what the average age of the viewer would be, I would say a 13-year-old boy.
Oh,
But if
okay.
you ask me what the average video gamer, professional video gamer, well, first of all, they have to be 13 or above. And then I would say that they would be between the ages of 25 and 35.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And see, I would think they're, I don't know.
I would just think high school boys.
Yeah.
Whatever that age range is.
I would
what
still think 13-year-old boy and maybe 13.
But they don't have the money for the equipment to stream.
But they're
Because I
honest.
think about my age group, which will be unsaid, and I'm
And
too
the
busy working.
70-year-olds.
But that's
I'm
what
too
these
busy
people.
working.
But that's what these
But-
people do for a living.
I guess so.
Okay, well
So what's the answer?
The answer that I got whenever I did a quick search on this, and I mean, of course, the internet tells you everything, but I'm just going off what it said,
What you got?
is that the average age is 34 years old. That's the average age of a gamer. And interestingly
saying?
enough, the average age of a gaming male is 32, while the average gaming age of a female is 36. But this is what I found really interesting, is that 45% of the gaming population is female. So it's almost half and half. And that surprised me just because I see this in my mind stereotype as a teenage boy thing to do. So clearly I'm wrong about that. So, as you had that thought in your mind as a teacher to our audience, now kind of reevaluate. What does that mean to you? I don't know. So any comments about that before we move on?
My mind is blown.
Right. So what that means is we all are very judgmental and we stereotype people.
Exactly. Of course.
No, what it
How
means
else
is
you
we
gonna-
don't know. We are uneducated about this.
I'm okay
Well-
being uneducated about video games.
Well, but look, you say that, Mosley, but I'm going to correct you because
Well,
here's the thing.
no, you don't correct me. I'm telling you. Okay. Like if I'm ignorant about video game culture, that's okay. There's other things I
But
can
it's
be.
not
It's worse
okay.
things I can be ignorant about.
No, because here's the thing.
But I'm
You're,
open to learning about the
and that's
culture.
good because
I'm open to learning about things.
here's the
So I'm
thing.
coachable.
The,
So don't correct me.
coachable.
Well, if you're coachable, then that means we can correct you.
Listen, exactly. You're proving your
So there you
coachability. Okay, so listen to me. Your kids are playing
Don't you say
video
listen to me.
games. Your kids are playing video games.
Yes, they are.
This is and you told me that you went and asked them today. Tell them the story real quick.
Okay, here's the story. I asked my kids today, do they? Because yesterday, on the show we talked about PewDiePie. Did I say it right, Tyler?
That's
Yes.
it.
And I talked to a group of my students today. There were 5 males, and I said, "Okay, we're talking about video games." I said, "Do you guys know PewDiePie?" And they all were like, "Oh." They all responded like that, and they all told me not. They told me not to watch it.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, they told you not to watch it because he makes like crude humor, and they don't want their teacher, who they highly respect.
I mean, I know, but they all responded. They all responded that they knew them. So yes, I understand. So while I'm ignorant to it, I'm open to it because I know we can connect with our kids that way.
Thank you.
Make sense,
That's
Brad?
what's important.
Okay, so before you start to shake your finger, yeah, thank you.
Well, okay, just so you know, like one of the most, he might be the most, the top streamer on Twitch. I don't know. I know he's up there. His name's Ninja, and he's 28 years old. So I mean, just saying.
Okay.
I don't know, but
We're diving into some new territory about things that we can, take from it. And I'm always a believer, and we can learn from anything. So, I think we hit something here.
Yeah. So okay,
So
so
that's fine.
I was kind of just reading through and I was trying to find like what is the gaming culture? Why is it so attractive to so many people, whether it be a high school boy or a 36-year-old woman? Okay, why? I mean, that's pretty different if you think about it. So what's making it so appealing? So here's some things that I found, and I'm just going to kind of list them off, and then you guys kind of chime in with your thoughts on that. But the first reason that people said that the gaming community is so strong is because it gives everyone a fresh start. So like you can be anonymous, right? You don't even have to physically show yourself. And so like if I'm someone who I feel like I'm unattractive, or maybe I have a physical deformity, or whatever the case may be, whenever I'm in a public place, it's really difficult maybe for me to hide those insecurities that I have. But when I can be in a gaming community and I can have an avatar, that's a level playing field. Now it doesn't matter, And so one thing to think about is, what does that say about our society? But
It doesn't.
what does it say about our school? And I mean, here's the thing. If you ask, and I don't have a statistic on this, but I've talked to a lot of my friends in counseling, and I've talked to a lot of my friends that work in special services and deal with, social emotional type things. And one of the number one things, the problems that we're facing in American schools, is bullying, to whatever extent that means. And I realize that becomes a really touchy topic because, a lot of people just throw that word out there, like they don't get their way, so you bullied me. And that's not what we're talking about. But literally like hazing and people that can't function in an educational environment because of the way that they're processing the environment around
the
them.
social pressures. And I'll say, in the beginning of every single school year, I always do like a little icebreaker, and I always do the same one where I mean I do more than one, but the one I always do is the kids get in a group, and like they have to like come up with superpowers and stuff and whatever, and it's like this really big long drawn out game. But when I do it with 7th and 8th graders, I am astonished with how everybody just wants the power to be invisible. And they're always like, well, that means I can go out and do whatever I want. Nobody will see me, and da 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 da. And I'm thinking like, no, it's not. It's because you don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
It's because there is something about you that you are insecure about, and you wish that like if something embarrassing happened, you could just turn invisible and it'd go away.
And this is really interesting because I was talking to a teacher the other day, and we were talking about Flipgrid. I don't know if anybody's ever used Flipgrid, but
Recently,
yeah. So basically, Flipgrid is kind of like this interactive video what, I don't know if you call it chat, but it's a way to present yourself on video, and then like other students can see your answer or your reflection, and then they can comment or give a reflection in response. And it's just a fun little social media type thing for formative assessment if you want in your class. And one of the teachers I was talking to, they were like, yeah, I used to use Flipgrid. I kind of stopped because all the kids they always covered their faces with emojis. And at first I was like, why would they do that? And he was like, well, because other kids, if they didn't, would take their video and make memes about them and blast them everywhere and embarrass them.
Yes.
And I was like, that would never occur to me, because as an adult, I don't do that.
Yeah.
So
it's gonna be
so I mean, now we have this gaming community where I can say my name is Linda, and I'm 27, and I could really be like a 14-year-old boy. So I mean, is that good? Is that bad? But that's what people want, is anonymity, and they can get it in the gaming community.
Yeah, because there's a lot of YouTubers out there that use, whether it be just a drawn animated thing that is their avatar, or maybe it's actually animated and it moves or whatever. And that's because, like, if they reveal their face, well, one, if they get bumped into the like in real world, people will recognize them. But two, it's because, like, I mean, people do that. Like, I mean, I've had my own students like take random pictures of me and then cut my faces out, and then like
I have seen.
And mine, and guess what? They all show me.
Yeah, they show me, and they'll take a picture of somebody else, and then they'll copy and paste my face, and it'll be like everywhere. All around.
That's actually my favorite. My favorite thing that a kid did to me was, we were on a band trip, and a kid passed up their phone, and it showed like all these kids, and they all have my face, and I just actually thought it was really funny.
It's funny when they do that.
But okay, so in addition to that anonymity, the article stated that it also it makes everybody on an equal playing field. Like, everybody starts equal in that community or in that world. And so then people can be judged on their contribution to the community rather than any other factor. So I think those are some things to really think about. I think as educators, we're aware of this stuff, and I don't think that there is a school in the United States that isn't aware of the bullying problem, that's not trying to figure out how to help it. I mean, and I realize that we can't control everything kids do and say, and that's not the goal. But I mean, and you tell me, Tyler, in the gaming community, is this a major problem, or is this something that's
bullying?
Yeah, just like that.
Oh, yeah, bullying's a huge, like, cyberbullying's like a huge mega deal. Like, that's a really red hot topic. And then like I mean, you can get banned from a lot of these sites and a lot of streaming sites or whatever if there's toxicity that's going on. And what there's a I don't want to say it's a controversy or not or whatever, because I'm not like an expert on it. I just watch some video game people, but like, I know that some people try to hold the streamer responsible for what is said in their chat when they don't really control their chat. Now, I think that they've updated it so that way you can kind of control what is said in the chat a little bit more, but a lot of that stuff's happening live. But let me tell you this, is that the main reason why kids retreat to video games in the video game community is because there's a place for them. There is an endless amount of different genres and types of video games. So like, if you're a kid and you don't like Call of Duty, that's totally fine. You can go play League of Legends, and it's a strategy-based game. It's like chess on steroids. And there's literally over hundreds of different characters that have unique abilities that you can go play, and you'll never master all of them. So pick the one you want. Or like, if you don't want to do that and you want to build stuff, you can go do Minecraft. If you want to learn how to code computers, there's a version of Minecraft that helps you learn how to code computers. Like, there's a place for anybody and everybody in the gaming world, but it is also kind of like the Wild West, like, which is one of the things that people things like COPPA and things like that are starting to really kind of latch down on. Like, one of the greatest he was the up and coming Fortnite player, and he was making, I think he was making close to $1 million like every other month or something through his streams and stuff. But he got kicked from Twitch because he was only 12. and
Wow.
you have to be 13. And it was like a big deal because everybody's like, I mean, he's doing everything right. Like, I mean, he's not toxic. Like, he's doing these things, but the law says you
Mm-hmm.
have to be 13.
So when he turns 13, can he get back on there?
He can, but I mean, it's like his whole viewership is like gone until he gets back on, you know.
Right. Interesting.
But I mean, I'm sure he'll be able to rebuild. I don't remember who that guy was, and I think it happened like last year or something.
Mm-hmm.
But there's things that happen like that all the time where kids lie about how old they are. But there's hazing that goes on with like you suck at this game or like whatever, and it's just, I mean, but that happens with anything. Like, I mean, think about football.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, like those guys in the football tunnel, whatever, before they go out there, they're yelling like, "We're gonna kill them, we're gonna hit them," and then they're like punching each other and knocking each other's heads, and we do that in public school.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
don't
but I
know.
guess, like also with that, they feel safe because I mean, I know they play with some people they know, but don't gamers usually play with like people that are just like around the world?
Yeah, and it's something that I've noticed in the last like 6 years or so. Like when that first came about, like when Xbox 360 came out. Now you could do play around with like online with Xbox and PlayStation 2, but it was really slow because it was only DSL, and very few people had cable internet. And then when 360 came out and like Halo 3 especially came out, and Halo and stuff, everyone had a mic, and like there were no party chats. So the only way you could communicate with people was inside the game chat. So like the way it works is that like if I'm in a game, I can talk to those people in that game, or I can have my own separate chat where I have all my friends in there, and I only talk to those people. And it's really kind of gone away from game chat, and people only want to talk to the people who are in their party chat. So yeah, you do play with a lot of people from like around the world, but I mean, I've started playing video games pretty heavily again the last like 2 weeks, and like I haven't really been able to talk with anybody. It's kind of boring because I'm just like playing a game and I don't have anybody to talk to.
Okay, so kind of looking back, so one of the main draws is that people can be anonymous and have a fresh start, and there's an equal playing ground. Okay, the second thing that the article talked about was that it is empowering. It's a community that empowers people, so they have a means of making friends, right? And that they feel like they're a part of something exciting and fulfilling. So I think right there, we have a common thread going on, and it's relationship. Like, people want to be connected, and this is an easy way to find people of similar interest and connect. Then the third thing that it talked about was that it's a shared experience. So in other words, it's kind of like, back in when I was young, you'd go like on a camping trip,
Back in the 30s.
right? You go like on a camping trip or something like
Is that on
this
your
with your
dinosaur?
friends, and like, or you'd go to like summer camp, and that's where you bonded with people and you had that experience. You did those things, and so then you grew friendships out of those organized activities. And so in a way, this gaming community kind of is like that. They're encountering problems, they're solving them together, they're having inside jokes, and then the result is friendships, right? So I just thought that in that article it's very interesting that the main focus was that really people are wanting to connect with people. They're wanting relationships. And I don't think that comes as a surprise to any of us, but I think the question that we can stop and say right now is, look at your classroom and what opportunities are you giving on a daily basis to allow kids to build relationships. And I hate to tell you this, but if what you do every day is stand up and lecture, you're not fulfilling this need. Yeah. And you might say, well, I have a lecture-based class. Like, I teach this. Well, that's fine, but don't forget your audience. You might have a lecture-based class, but you don't have lecture-based children.
Adults are bad with lecturing, so.
Mm-hmm. And I am.
It's because we think what we have to say is so important.
Yeah.
It's not.
So that's why this podcast is now over.
Well, but it's also, I think people also like a story, and it's just like anything else. Like there's good and there's bad. So like the amount of toxicity that goes on in the gaming community and like the bullying whatever, there's the exact opposite too. Like if you ever see any videos of Minecon, which is a convention for Minecraft players, like those professional Minecraft players, like the Hermitcraft people, Mumbo Jumbo, Ice Skull 83, Stress Monster 101, like any of those people,
He's talking
like
another language over here.
like when those little kids come up and talk to them, it is like the most amazing thing in the world, because like those Minecraft players are like their heroes.
Right.
And what's crazy is that like they can actually meet their heroes, and then they can actually play with their heroes. And that's something I mean, how many times, like, if a kid's like watching like Tom Brady and they're like, oh, Tom Brady's the best, how often are they going to be able to actually meet Tom Brady and play with him? They're
Right.
not. But you can actually probably go on and play Minecraft with Mumbo Jumbo, and it doesn't cost you any money. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of like scheduling it, and if he's able to do it, you know what I mean? Like, so that means like the world to some of those kids. And that's just, I mean, and what's crazy about the Minecraft community is that it's like it ranges anywhere from like 6 to 66. Like anybody plays that game. I don't know.
Yeah.
So well,
what else?
do you have any more?
No, that was kind of what I had looked at.
Well, what I looked at in my article, because in case you guys don't know, off screen we all signed each other an article to read. Mine talks about why people want to watch other people play video games, which I think is kind of redundant, because it's the same reason why people want to watch other people play football, or why other people want to watch other people play basketball and things of that nature.
But the thing is that it is hard for someone who doesn't enjoy watching video games wrap their brain around that. That's hard.
And I get, and I understand that, because I don't like football. Like, I think football is dumb. Like, if you seriously like had a stopwatch and watch the amount of time that is actually played during football, it like accumulates down to like a few seconds, and then there's an ad, and then they hit each other again, and then there's more ads. Like, it's not a fun experience to watch.
For you.
But anyway, my article talks about the reason why that is because there's buying advice. It's a community built around a streamer's personality, and a chance to observe a professional grade skill. And I think the professional grade skill is something that's hard for a lot of people to understand, but I don't want to dive into that too much, because we're trying to relate this back to teaching. But the grand scheme of it all is the personality. Like, if you don't make yourself seem like a cool person, like if the kids don't like you as a person, then they're not going to listen to anything you have to say.
Well, that's
Like,
really good. You might say that again.
If you don't make yourself a good person or an interesting person, then kids aren't going to care what you have to say.
So then here comes this. How do I make myself an interesting person to the kids? Because what I may think is interesting, and even what I may think is interesting on a level of my colleagues, may not be interesting to a teenager. So how do I find that balance to where I maintain my personality, but I'm interesting and relevant?
You find something that is about yourself that is not related to school, that is not related to your content, or maybe it's briefly, very lightly touches your content area, and you share that with the kids. And you don't share it. It's like what we've talked about before. You don't share your plan with the kids. You don't go in front of them and say, tomorrow is going to be a different day. Mr. Pratt's going to be at that door, and he's going to make sure you're walking in this classroom quietly. I'm going to be right here. I'm going to sit you down. You're going to be quiet. And then you're, like, or you don't sit there and tell the kids, like, you're going to sit here and be very quiet. I'm going to talk a lot, and you're going to write notes.
As far as like that goes too, I think you have to consider your audience, and you have to kind of know a bit about them and know what triggers them, and like what cuts them on, like if you say something, those that were tuned out, that start tuning in, like, are you that in tune with your class? So you have to kind of be very observant, and you have to kind of do that before you get in front of them, I think. And then you can know what things you can do and say to be able to share with them, when to share, so you can get them more engaged. I think if you try to do something that's, I guess, out of character for yourself too, you'll feel uncomfortable, and the kids they'll know, they'll read straight through it. But if you genuinely like see their interest, and maybe try to gear things, either the lesson towards something or just have a conversation about something off topic, because kids love to do things off topic.
Hmm.
It shows them that you're real and that you care more about them than the content, and then they'll start diving. They'll start working more for you because they realize that your interest is not just to get information to them, but it is to expand what they can do because you care about them as a person.
I think what you said was so powerful because, like, you have to know your audience. And I think that goes for anything that you want to be successful in. You have to know your audience. And I think about some things that I've had to do. Like, when I very first came to a school that I was working at, like, there were a whole lot of athletic style boys in the band program. And that I don't connect well with sports. I played sports as a kid growing up, and it was miserable for me. Like, my dad, he wanted me to do it, and I wanted to make him happy, so I did it. And I'm just not a sports person, and I don't have anything against sports. I'm not good at them, so why would I want to do that? So I found ways to connect, because I had a bunch of kids that were ballers. Like, they just wanted to go play basketball, and I had to get them to connect. And, like, you don't want to see me play basketball. It's embarrassing for me and for you. Like, I'm one of those people that you're like, ooh, I don't really want to watch this. This is really bad. So, like, what did I do? We had a lock-in. We let the kids stay till like midnight. We had pizza. We had games, and I had open gym for them, and I let them play. And suddenly they saw, like, you care about what I care about. Not that you care about basketball, but you care enough that I care about it. And so, like, you have to make those connections. And, I have found, like, I happen to really like music theory, and I like to teach kids how to play fundamentals on their instruments. Most kids do not find any of that very fun at all, right?
No, I like it too.
I happen to really like that, right? But I mean, that's equivalent to, like, literally teaching, like, spelling words, right? Okay, I mean, it's like, it's just factual stuff you have to know, and most kids aren't into it. But you know what? Most kids really like conspiracy theories, and I happen to be an avid conspiracy theorist, right? So what I can do is, ahead of time, I can connect with these kids and talk to them about how, have you ever thought of this or that in off times? And then whenever I come in and say, hey, let's talk about how to build a scale, they're interested because they're interested in me. And then I throw little things in along the way for fun, So I agree with you guys. I think that it is really important that we are, I think here's the problem. Teachers are so worried about getting a good test score and making sure they cover all their state standards that they feel like they don't have time to get to know their kids. But what's the old adage?
But when it comes down to it, if you don't know your kids, then you will not be able to get to that.
Exactly.
So if you try to skip those steps,
yes,
then you'll find yourself in a predicament where you have all this information you want to get to them, but you have this barrier in between your knowledge and their receptor, and they don't want to receive it because you don't have that connection with them.
But let's stop and face reality. Most teachers probably that are listening right now are nodding their head saying, yeah. And what you would find if you polled teachers, they all think that that's important. But yet, if you see in practice, you'll find that most teachers don't take the time to do it. Exactly. So you have to be intentional. And just because you think it's important doesn't mean you're doing it. Yeah, very few teachers are going to disagree. Very few teachers are going to disagree and say, I don't think you have to have personal relationships. You just need to teach them trigonometry. Okay. Very few teachers are going to think that way. I'm sure there are some.
You're right about that.
But it's one thing to agree. It's another thing to actually do it.
And put it in practice. That's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think about there's a really high I don't know to say high profile, but there's a really good percussion teacher that I work with in Houston, and when we work together at other schools where there's not a percussion teacher or something, he is a super advocate. Like, he tells them exactly what the directors need to do. He's like, you need to work about fundamentals. You need to do this. This stuff is way too hard. Don't worry about that. Make them really good at this first. He like shows the director how to scaffold for their instrument. Mm-hmm. But then when I go and help him with his kids for his school, I'm like, you don't think this is a little hard? He's like, yeah, but they're my kids. They'll be able to handle it. And I'm like, you just fell into the same trap that you just like went and told these other guys about. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And to go with the conspiracy theories, like you have to that's not something that you immediately just dump on them. That's something that you throw in there randomly. Like I know
Mhm.
that like when I'm teaching, it's always fun for me to randomly, like I'll just say something, like, oh, and then there's this and this and this, and it kind of looks like a donut, which is the shape of the earth. Moving on, and then everyone's like, wait, what? Like you think the earth is shaped like a donut? And then now, like, then later on after class, like they want to talk to me about that, and now they're engaged in with whatever else. So it's all about finding things, and I think that teachers don't need to be afraid to jump on trends. Like if it's a trend that's not or if it's a trend that's not school appropriate, of course don't jump on it. But if it is school appropriate, jump on it. Like I remember when like there was like a big trend that was going on about like League of Legends or something, and one of my students came up to me and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Lamont, I want to be Tracer." And I like looked at him and was like, "But I'm already Tracer." And he's like, "But I want to be Widowmaker." And I was like, "But I'm already Widowmaker." And his face like lit up because like he knew what I was, because I knew what he was talking about,
Mm.
kind of thing. Because
Well,
I knew
good,
what the
because I
trend
don't
was.
know what you're talking about.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, but I think there's a lot of teachers out there who do know what the trends are, but they think since they're a teacher, they can't. They have to act like they don't know.
Mm.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I got you.
No, I think like with the kids too, once they see that you're real, because I think kids for the most part, like you kind of idolize your teachers, and I know
Mhm.
a lot of like the really good ones I did, and so you hold them to this pedestal, uh, and once they see that you're like just a regular person, and if you make a mistake, you admit your mistake, and things like that, then they say, oh well, like they're being vulnerable, so I can do the same thing, and all walls go down, and then you're able to like connect with them, get them information, and let them expand what they, how they learn and the way they receive information, and then there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tyler,
It,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, like, it doesn't matter whether it's virtual or in person. The three skills of building culture is still safety, vulnerability, and vision. Like that's just how it is. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter whether you're in person or not.
Talking
Anyway, what
about
were you
that.
gonna say, Prep?
Okay, so read back through your list again. Just like hit it. Just don't explain them. Just read back through your main points again.
My main points were why people watch other people play video games is buying advice, so that way they know if the game is worth anything, because video games are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a community that's built around a streamer's personality, like PewDiePie or Ninja or somebody like that.
Okay, and that's
And
kind
then
of
a
what we
chance,
were just talking about, right?
yeah, and
Okay.
then a chance to observe a professional grade skill.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that, to kind of wrap up those things, I think this is really smart, is that as teachers, we give buying advice, right? I mean, we have our content, we have what the kids need to know to be successful. So we've got that there. So we're there to give them an education, right? And that's really all buying advice is. Okay. And so most teachers have that. I would say that 9 times out of 10, that's a teacher's strong thing. That's why they got into this, because they love, geography or whatever. And so that's what they teach. So I think one thing that we really need to focus on is personality, and how am I connecting with the kids, and how am I building a culture that it's not that they worship me and that they just want to come see me all the time, but it's that I've connected with them and we are invested in one another, right? But then I remember earlier we were kind of talking about like seeing a professional, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler, you said that we kind of were skipping over that to get to the personality thing, but I think that's worth kind of talking about for a second, because I remember one time you led a professional development that talked about like, what do you do as an educator to improve your skills and make sure that you're sharpened and you're on the cutting edge of your subject? And I think that's really important, because times are changing, and when you're a teacher who doesn't even really know how to use your email very well, the kids aren't that interested in you because you're not relevant. Like if a kid comes up and says like, hey, can we meet on a Google Meet? And you're like, what's a Google Meet? You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think it is important that you become an expert at what you do. And it doesn't mean that you have all the answers, but you're at least a step ahead of the kids. And I think a lot of times we as educators just kind of fold our hands and say, well, that's just the young ones, and that's not the way we do things. And the problem is, it may not be the way you do things, but you're losing their respect because you aren't in the same time zone as them. You know, like you're living in a different era. It's like the boomers versus the zoomers, right?
Yeah.
Any
Zoom,
thoughts on
zoom,
that?
zoom.
Right, exactly.
Mosley, I feel like you've wanted to say something for a while
No,
now.
no. It's like, well,
Are you saying I talk
like,
too long?
article, huh?
Is Tyler saying I talk too long?
Well, you do talk too long.
Okay.
The article, because we talked about this yesterday, and I was just really surprised why people would watch other people play games. And so, like the article that I was looking at here, it touched on the same like response kind of, but it kind of gave different reasons. And so this is like the 4 reasons why people watch gaming content on YouTube. So it's a couple of them. So which kind of, and as I was going down, I kind of like tied that into how we can use that as educators. So I know you kind of listed your things. It's very similar, but it gives different reasons. So this might help us too. So the 4 reasons people watch gaming content on YouTube. One is to be a part of something larger than themselves. So, the thing we talked about earlier is like safety, and so kids, everyone wants to be a part of something, sometimes they don't know how to do that. And I think with the gaming community, since it's all shapes and sizes, colors, denominations, and it's not many prerequisites you need to meet to be able to be a gamer. You just can be one, that's why a lot of people do that. And watching games, like I just can watch it, and just enjoy that, so I think about that. I took a class in college and it was called Systems Philosophies, and we just talked about what things are put in place to make organizations either strive or die. Okay, this was one of the most interesting classes I took, and it was very relevant in what I do as a band, because band is just an organization. And we dove into all the different companies, and we talked about like what things did they put in place for this company to work, and then like what companies went under and why did they go under, and things like that. But that led us to culture, and the culture that you create in a class is, do you have a culture that cultivates kids feeling safe, and is it easy to be a part of what you're doing? And that's why. So people watch gaming content because it's easy to do and you feel connected automatically. So we want to think about that, and we can directly connect that to what we do. Is what you're doing or what you're providing, is it easy to be a part of? Am I able to be part of the community quickly? Which makes you feel safe. So that's what I got from that one. And then they have I know statistics. Right, you love statistics, so you're always on that. So 56% of the gamers that watch content, it's where they connect. So think about that. Especially if you have a class where people feel comfortable, they feel like they can connect and get away from other things. If you create that type of atmosphere, you'll get large returns, I think. So especially that, like with that one right there, that kind of hit home. It's because I was saying, why do people watch things? That one makes more sense now. So I told you I was ignorant, but I'm open to So probably you should be proud of me.
That's good.
And so as I was going down, the second one is for inclusion to be accepted. And so from that one, we said we have all shapes and sizes and things like that, and it's kind of what kids want to like. Kids want to be accepted. So this is an easy way to be able to connect with the community and be accepted. And this one says, we talked about female gamers. This statistic says 66% of the female YouTube gamers, they connect because they want to hear from people that they can relate to. Isn't that interesting?
That is.
So you got that. And then the third one was for the fun of it.
Okay, so that's important. Like, it should be fun.
Yeah, it should be fun. So it's fun for the escape.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
And so what I took from that is, as far as like what we do, all of our content like areas, I want, and I know this is what I do. So like, I want the kids to feel like, oh man, I'm so glad I got a chance to get away from what I was doing for this amount of time to be with you. And so I do everything I can do to make it an experience. I try to make my classes more than just a class. I want to make it an experience that they can take from and they feel like whenever we're done, like, man, that was great. Or like, man, I want to affect change in somehow, in some way. And if I can make it an experience, it can sit with them longer. Does that make sense? So it's an escape. So them watching content is an escape. And if we can create that same type of feeling, atmosphere, I think we can take them further,
Yeah.
you know?
It's interesting that you talk about how it's the escape and like you try to make an experience and stuff, because and I want to make sure that this is clear, because I know like a lot of people who don't play video games don't fully understand. It's not that I'm just sitting there and I'm watching someone and it's quiet and they're just playing Call of Duty and I'm just watching them. Although some of those videos do exist where it's just like a montage and they have like music playing, but it's like people watch these videos because uh it's what is said, it's the commentary that is said over it. It's
Okay.
what it they are actually making content of them playing. They're sitting there and they're making jokes about the game and like saying these things, or if they're playing a horror game, like they'll make sure that the room is totally dark or whatever, so that way it's like fun, and like they'll scream and like whatever.
Experience.
They're making it an experience. And there's actually a difference between like gamers who make content for like YouTube and Twitch and stuff, and like actual major league gamers who like actually go, and like the guy who won the Fortnite thing and won $3 million, whatever was it, like a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever, who was actually scrutinized on multiple talk shows and made fun of. And he just kind of like looked at like Whoopi Goldberg and was like, I made more than you in like 4 hours. But anyway, the point is that like they're making content, they're doing something more. So like think about like when you're teaching that geometry lesson or like whatever. If you just stand up there and you're just like, okay, this is an isosceles triangle, like da da da. But if you make it fun, making an experience, and you make jokes about angles or whatever. Like I had a teacher one time, she used to make jokes about how it was acute, so it was small. She'd be like, cute. And she would like these like little funny things, and then she would obtuse, and she would like do these big hand motions, like make it really like fun. And I was in fourth grade at the time, and I was like, "Man, cute, obtuse," and like that's something that stayed with me. Yeah, I sounded just like that. That's something that stayed with me my whole life. And then actually, when I was in high school and I was in pre-cal, uh, I'll never forget her. Like shout out to Miss Stroud. She's one of the best teachers I've ever had my entire life. And we'd be working on something, and she'd be like, "It's time for that good old split and solve." And I'll never forget how to do an equation, because you got to do the old split and solve.
So that's funny because so I'm working with a first year teacher, right? Who's doing a really great job, by the way. And I told him, I said, you always want to have those moments where the kids are shocked that you would do that, kind of not nothing inappropriate, nothing, but you want things to sit with them, and so I said, you always kind of you want to have one of the moments where they say, I can't believe he just said that, so he watches how I like my presentation. I said, did you find the moment? He said, yeah, I saw exactly what you did. I said, you think they're going to forget that? He said, no. And I'll come back and they'll remember exactly that point in my discussion or whatever. And that's a good point that you brought up, Tyler, because I had a teacher in my undergrad, and we were learning intervals. And intervals, everyone, is a space between two notes. Okay, so the example is like right? And so there's an interval called a minor six, right? And here's what she said. She says, I'm not sure how, like, there's not a song for this. She said, but I think she learned it this way. And she says, all I know is this song. It's minor six. And she did that. And that was a minor six. And she just kind of tiptoed across the room like it was super creepy. And she did it for a long time. And everyone in the room was like, what's wrong with her? Minor six, and we're like, this lady has lost her mind. And we didn't realize at the moment she was making an experience that was sitting with us. And like, I know that interval, like that sat with me because she made something. She made something sit with me because she made an experience, and she was over the top. She was dancing around. I don't think she ever danced any other time, but at that moment, she did something that was different than the norm, and it got my attention, and it stuck with me. You know, so that's something to think about when you're presenting things to kids you want them to remember.
Now, okay, so now I have a question for you two, and maybe this is
Let me
something
cut
that
off
we
my
can talk
keyboard.
about tomorrow.
Okay.
Uh, is does there come an age limit where you don't do that? Like in when you're in college, because like you had just talked about you had a college professor who did that, but
Yeah, I was in college.
most college professors just stand up and lecture. So
No.
like, does a college professor like is college too old to be trying to make this super high engaging, silly, fun content, or is the audience just changed?
Let me just say this, okay? Uh, and okay, so I recently got my master's. Okay,
Mhm.
I taught for 10 years. I stopped teaching, and then I became a student. Okay, uh, going back to school as a student after teaching for 10 years, you think totally different. You analyze, you critique everything that teachers do, that the professors do, and the professors they're just teachers that have gotten another degree. You know, like that's all they are. And my best teachers in college. I mean, for my masters, they teach. They think exactly how I think. Like I had some teachers that lectured. That amount of information got in one ear, and still, like I kept it and retained it for what I needed. But the teachers that really made an impact and helped me remember things and stick with me, they taught the exact same way that I would teach a high school or a middle school kid. You know, they didn't talk down to us, but their presentation was captivating. They had good relationships with us where we felt like we could be vulnerable and try things with them, and it was the same thing. You know,
Mm. So
I
you
don't think so.
the lecture just stayed in like active memory. It was never in like it never. I mean, I guess some of it probably sunk in, but the stuff where the
Yeah.
teachers actually taught. So there is no age limit to any of this stuff. Like you're like this is just how you're supposed to teach in order to be engaging and to make this
Well,
right.
Because you know what I would do, like in my master's class, like I'm sitting here and like I have my professor in the front, had their PhD in whatever or DMA, doctor so and so, okay, and I'm sitting in the class and I'm analyzing the engagement level of these master level students, and I'm saying they're not getting any of this. And I guess, and look, I'm telling you, that's what I'm doing. I'm like, look at that. Like, they're not getting any of this, and they're like zoning out and things like that. I'm like, you guys are like, we're getting our masters here. We're all graduate students. This is graduate level stuff. And I'm like, because of the presentation of the professor, like people just zone out. And I was really surprised, but some of them were not teachers before, but some of them were. And it's the same thing. It's like people have degrees and whatever, but if engagement's not there, learning is not at the highest level.
well, it kind of, based on what you said, Tyler, I think my perspective is this, that people are people no matter if they're 5 years old or if they're 50 years old. They're people.
Yeah,
I,
And
I would agree with that.
I had the opportunity to hear a keynote speaker this year, and I'd never heard of her before, which I don't know. She probably wouldn't want to know that I never heard of her, but I hadn't. And her name is Kendra Hall. Okay. And she
oh, I
is,
know her.
I'm
right.
googling her right now.
She is a professional storyteller.
Oh,
And
okay.
like that's what she does. She's a professional storyteller, but she goes around and she helps like big corporations and things like this figure out how to market better. And her advice is this, in a nutshell, that people are people. And the one thing all people have in common is they want to hear a story. And that's what makes a good movie. That's what makes a good commercial. That's what makes a good advertising strategy. And that's what makes people connect with other people are stories. And if you think about it, I mean, even if you look like in antiquity, right? So, what was the way that the Bible was passed down for years and years and years? It was through stories,
Email.
right? Through email, exactly. It was through stories. Like parents told their children, and their children told their children, and their
That's
children
true.
told their children. And so I just think there's a lot of merit to that. And so these people that are just getting up and lecturing, there's a reason it goes in one ear and not the other because that's not the human experience. Okay. But someone who can draw you in and share a life experience. And she talks about a good story is always, it's going to relate to people's life experiences, either by something you've happened, or something that someone else has experienced that everyone can relate to. And that's what she started telling a story, and she stops and she says, see, right now, I just said this, and every one of you are thinking of a time that happened to you. And it was like, oh, wow, yeah, she got it right. Like, that's exactly what I was thinking about, because that's how we relate to each other is through stories. And so I just thought that was really powerful. Tyler, you want to say something?
No, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Okay.
You hear?
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, so check out Kendra Hall. She's a great storyteller for one, but she has some really cool advice. But I think, what we're kind of pulling out from this episode is that the gaming culture is successful, and it's successful for all the reasons that, any culture that's successful is successful. And that is absolutely because it's about connecting with people. And so as educators, we've got to go back in. I think the challenge that we're going to face in the upcoming months is figuring out how to connect if it's in a virtual environment. But the answer to it is, for example, the gaming community, that's the only way they connect. So they're connecting the same way, they're just doing it virtually. And that's going to be the challenge that we have.
Hey, and this is something that maybe we can talk about again more tomorrow. Is I got sent a link. I haven't watched it yet, but my friend sent me, a fellow educator sent me this text message and said, well, it's finally happened. I just saw the first ad for online homeschooling.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So they sent me the link to it, and I'll watch it, and then I'll send it to you guys. And I think that's something that that's going to really be a thing in August.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, good stuff tonight. Hopefully, everybody's leaving with something to think about, and hopefully, you're kind of considering this and it motivates you to get things ready for the future.
Well, I'm motivated. I just want to go and teach right now.
Well, I figured you did.
I'm going to make some more lessons, right?
I'm going to call all my kids right now and say, y'all log on right now. We're going to learn right now.
I'm fixing a lecture.
I have a lecture for y'all right now.
So, all right. We'll see you tomorrow.